Before Islam became a movement, before the Qur'an echoed through the minarets, and before the world called him a prophet, she believed. Not because of miracles, not because of promises of power, but because she saw truth in its purest form. And she gave it everything. Her name was Khadija, the first to believe, the first to sacrifice, the first home Islam ever knew. While the world turned away, she stood beside him. When he trembled in fear after the first revelation, it was her arms that steadied him. When the Quraysh tried to silence him, it was her wealth that kept the mission alive. And when Islam was just a whisper in the shadows, her faith made it echo. But this isn't just a story of marriage. It's the untold foundation of a faith followed by over 1 billion people today. Her strength was silent. Her love was unshakable. Her reward, promised by the angels themselves. This is not a history lesson. It's the heartbeat of Islam's beginning. And once you know her story, you'll never see the Qur'an the same way again. Makkah, centuries before the Qur'an was revealed, was a city of idols, power, and business. The Kaaba, once built by Prophet Ibrahim, a.s., had been turned into a house of 360 gods. Wealth ruled, lineage mattered, and women? Most were treated as property. But in the middle of all this stood a woman unlike any other. Her name was Khadija bint Khuwailid. She was not just wealthy, she was respected. Known as Tahira, the Pure One, she ran a massive trade empire. Men of the Quraysh, leaders with high status, noble names, and fortunes of their own, they all wanted to marry her, but she refused them all. She wasn't looking for a man with gold. She was looking for one with truth. The Qur'an later revealed, "Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you." Surah Al-Hujurat 49:13. At a time when society measured people by status and tribe, Khadija had the vision to measure a man by his integrity, and that man was Muhammad ibn Abdullah, peace be upon him. He wasn't wealthy. He had no political title. He didn't own land. But he was known as Al-Amin, the trustworthy one. Everyone in Makkah knew he never lied, never cheated, and never broke his word. Khadija had heard of his honesty. She had watched him work. So she offered him a position in her trade caravan, a test of his character. He returned with not just profit, but with reputation. Her servant Maysara told her, "I saw angels shading him. I saw honesty in every transaction. I have never seen anyone like him." And something stirred in Khadija's heart. She didn't wait for him to propose. She sent a message of interest through a friend. He accepted. And so, against all expectations of society, a woman of status married a man with none, and it became one of the most sacred marriages in history. They were different in wealth, different in background, but their hearts were united in something far deeper: truth. She gave him her home, her wealth, her comfort. He gave her his loyalty, his love, and a peace no riches could buy. And their home, it became a sanctuary long before Islam was revealed. It was built not just of stone, but of mercy, patience, and purpose. The Qur'an says, "And among his signs is that he created for you from yourselves mates that you may find tranquility in them, and he placed between you affection and mercy." Surah Ar-Rum 30:21. This verse was not revealed yet, but they were already living it. Khadija never interrupted him when he sat for hours in silence. She never mocked him for retreating into the cave of Hira. She understood that his soul was searching for something greater. This was the beginning. Before Islam had a name, before the Qur'an had a book, before the world knew what was coming, Khadija had already given Islam a foundation. And the greatest proof of her strength, she never shouted. She never fought in wars. She didn't lead armies or make speeches. Her strength was silent, but it built the house where truth would first find a home. Years passed in quiet peace. Muhammad now lived a simple, honest life. He worked with his hands. He helped the poor. He walked alone when others gathered in noise. But deep in his soul, Something was stirring. The idols around the Kaaba troubled him. He saw injustice. Girls buried alive. The poor exploited. Power in the hands of the cruel. His heart couldn't accept it, so he began retreating, climbing the rocky hills of Makkah to reach a cave called Hira. There in the silence, he would reflect for hours, days, sometimes weeks. He didn't know it yet, but this stillness was preparing him for something beyond imagination. Then one night, it happened. A voice shattered the silence. A figure filled the cave. It was not of this world. The angel Gabriel appeared. Mighty, powerful, unlike anything human. He said, "Iqra," read. But Muhammad couldn't read. He trembled. The angel embraced him. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And then came the first verses of the Qur'an. Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot of blood. Read, and your Lord is most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man what he never knew. Surah Al-Alaq 96, 1-5. The Qur'an had begun, but Muhammad didn't yet understand what was happening. He ran down the mountain, heart racing, limbs shaking, unsure if he was dying, losing his mind, or seeing a vision. He reached home. And who opened the door? Khadija. She saw his face, pale, frightened, his body trembling. He said, "Cover me, cover me." She wrapped him in her cloak, held him, listened. And then he said, "I fear for myself." What she said next changed the course of history. With calm strength, she replied, "By Allah, he will never disgrace you. You maintain family ties. You help the poor. You speak the truth. You carry the burden of others. You honor guests. You support the oppressed." This was not just comfort. It was confirmation. Before the world believed in Muhammad, Khadija already believed in his character. The Qur'an later confirmed what she already knew. And indeed, you are upon a great moral character. Surah Al-Qalam 68:4. Still unsure, Khadija took him to a wise elder, Waraqah ibn Nawfal, her cousin. He was a Christian who studied the ancient scriptures. After hearing the story, Waraqah said, "This is the same angel who came to Moses. You are the chosen prophet of this nation. But no, your people will reject you, harm you, and force you out." The words landed heavy. And so, in one night, the world changed. The cave that once held silence had now echoed with divine revelation. The man who once walked quietly would now carry the heaviest message ever revealed, and the woman who opened her arms to him became the first believer in Islam. Before even a single verse had been known to the world, it began with just one heart, one home, one woman. Before the Quran was written down, before a single public prayer, before anyone heard the name Islam, Khadija, R.A., had already believed. Not because of miracles, not because of fear, but because she knew truth when she saw it, and she had lived beside it for years. The prophet had not yet declared his message to the people of Makkah. The time was not right, but revelation was coming piece by piece. Verses that cut through darkness spoke of a single God and warned against injustice. And Khadija listened. When others bowed to idols of stone, she stood in her home beside a man who bowed only to Allah. The Quran had not yet commanded hijab, prayer, or fasting, but she followed the most important command of all: believe in Allah and His Messenger, Surah At-Tawbah 9:1-19, and believe she did, fully, deeply, without hesitation. Her home became the quiet center of a rising faith. There were no minarets, no crowds, no call to prayer. Just 2 people, sitting by the light of revelation, submitting to their Lord. Khadija gave more than belief. She gave her entire life. She used her wealth to support the mission. She freed slaves who embraced Islam. She hosted secret gatherings of early believers. Every coin, every meal, every comfort she once had, she placed at the feet of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and said, "Use this for the sake of Allah." The Quran later praised those who spent their wealth sincerely. Those who spend their wealth, seeking the pleasure of Allah, It is they whose hearts will be softened. Surah Al-Layl 92, 18-19. The world outside was growing colder. The Quraysh were beginning to whisper, threaten, and tighten their grip. But inside that home, faith grew stronger, and at the center of it all was a woman, quiet, strong, unseen by history's cameras, but seen by the angels, because she believed when no one else did. She was the first to say, La ilaha illallah, and her voice echoed into a future she would never live to see, but helped make possible. Islam was no longer a whisper. The Prophet Muhammad had begun preaching publicly. More people, especially the weak and the poor, were accepting the truth. The Quraysh elites felt their power slipping, so they responded, not with words but with cruelty. They struck a deal. Anyone who supports Muhammad or his tribe would be cut off. No buying, no selling, no marriage, no trade, no food. It was a total boycott. And so the Prophet, his followers, and his tribe, even those who weren't Muslim, were forced out of Makkah into a barren valley called Shib Abi Talib. No shelter, no crops, no relief. Nights were filled with hunger, days with thirst. The cries of starving children echoed through the cliffs. They ate leaves, they chewed on leather. Every breath was a test of patience, and in the middle of this was Khadija. Once she lived in comfort. Her home was grand, her food was abundant, her servants were many. Now she slept on the dirt, gave her last bite to others, watched her health slowly fade. But not once did she complain. The Qur'an says, "Or do you think you will enter paradise while such trial has not yet come to you as came to those before you?" Surah Al-Baqarah 2:214. She passed that trial, not with words but with sacrifice. Her wealth was gone. She had already given it all to support the Prophet and the early Muslims. Now she gave her body, worn by hunger and cold, as a final offering for the sake of Allah. The boycott lasted 3 long years, and still, she never turned back. The Quraysh thought they were breaking Muhammad by starving his people, but what they didn't know was that his greatest strength was the woman beside him. The boycott was eventually lifted, but its damage was done. Khadija had grown weak. The days of suffering had taken a toll on her health, but her spirit unshaken. This was not just a test of faith, it was the refinement of it. Because true faith isn't just believing in peace, it's holding on to Allah when the world turns cold. The boycott had ended. The Muslims returned to Makkah. Weary, thin, and broken in body, but not in faith. And Khadija, R.A., once the richest woman in Quraysh, now walked slowly, her strength fading. Years of hunger, sacrifice, and silent struggle had taken their toll. She never asked for anything in return, no reward, no praise, but Allah had already prepared something for her. One day the Prophet entered her room. Her body was weak, her face pale. He held her hand, eyes full of pain. She looked at him with love, no complaints, no fear. And then, her soul returned to her Lord. The Prophet buried her with his own hands. That year became known as the Year of Sorrow, because not long after, his uncle Abu Talib also died. Another protector gone. But it was Khadija's death that broke him most. He would later say, "She believed in me when no one else did. She supported me when others abandoned me. She comforted me when I was afraid." Her death was not just the loss of a wife, it was the loss of the first home of Islam. The Qur'an describes paradise as gardens of perpetual residence, beneath which rivers flow, wherein they will have purified spouses. Surah Al-Baqarah 2:25. And to her, Jibril had already delivered a message. Give Khadija the glad tidings of a palace in paradise, made of pearls, with no noise and no hardship inside. She had lived in sacrifice, she died in peace, and she returned to a home far greater than the one she gave up. Because those who give everything for Allah are never forgotten. She was gone, but never forgotten. Years passed. Islam spread beyond Makkah. The Prophet migrated to Medina. Battles were fought, Hearts were won. Thousands now called themselves Muslim. But in the quiet corners of his life, the prophet still remembered Khadija. Her name would bring tears to his eyes. He would send gifts to her friends. He would speak of her with a tenderness that no one could match. Aisha, R.A., his later wife, once asked him, "Was there no woman better than Khadija?" He replied, "She believed in me when no one else did. She accepted Islam when people rejected me. She shared her wealth when others held back. And Allah blessed me with children through her." This was her legacy. She never rode into battle, never led public prayers, never spoke to crowds, but her faith became the soil from which Islam grew. The Qur'an says, "The righteous will be in gardens and rivers, in a seat of honor near a sovereign, perfect in ability." Surah Al-Qamar 54:54-55. That is where she is now. She left behind no books, no poetry, no empire, only a story written in the hearts of believers, a story of sacrifice, of silent strength, of a woman who stood beside truth when truth stood alone. And so long as the Adhan echoes across the world, so long as the Quran is recited, her legacy lives on. Because before Islam had a name, before the first mosque was built, before any victory was won, there was Khadija, the first believer, the mother of the Ummah, the heart of the Prophet.